Modern Lifetime wasn't the first narrative that we've ever done, or I've ever done at least, but it is the first proper production that I've decided to make into a proper film, so a proper short film. We've obviously done things before for like college, as in, you know, college assignments and little web series things here and there. Stuff we're a little bit happy with, to be honest, with our first time as cinematographers, directors of photography, but nothing that we've, really tried at. And I guess technically you can say that we didn't try 100% of this just because of the way we filmed it, but we tried 100% compared to the limitations we had, if that makes any sense. To explain how this short film idea came about, we decided to enter into the Moment Film Festival. So for those who don't know, the Moment Invitational Film Festival is a short film competition run by a company called Moment, who do some of the best phone lenses and phone cases in the world for, professional mobile, I say professional, sometimes hobbyist, mainly hobbyist probably, mobile photography, but, bringing that to the next level. They do some of the best glass for that, and they do some of the best cases for that, and the marketing team they've got on YouTube are quite characters, so they are quite fun to watch, and they definitely do a good job at selling their products. I've watched the Moment Film Festival since I think it's been running for about 4 years, but I've watched it since about 2017, is that correct? No, it must be 2018, because I watched it for 1 year and I got really into it and I loved it, and then I watched it the next year, and that's the year that wanted me to actually be like, okay, you know what, I think I can do this. And throughout my life I have used cameras quite often, and I do like creating really nice cinematography and adding nice movement to images and creating shots that not many people would think of, and that's just something I like to do. And then when this film festival came around again, I was watching them thinking that this is actually something good to enter, because filmmaking is something that in the last few years I've realized this is what I want to do in my life, and this is how I want to get into it. But what do I want to do for my first short film? Because first of all, I know it has to be a short film really, because it's a nice step and segue into the filmmaking world. But I also knew that anything that I wanted to make as my first film or my first short film was going to be absolutely terrible. There's just no avoiding that. It's one of those things that you're going to look back over your life and be like, that first thing you made, you just don't even want to think about anymore because it was that bad. But to be honest, I was okay with that, because I already know cameras, I already know cinematography to a certain extent, and I've done that a lot of my life. I wanted to take this and Moment's limitations from the film festival to sort of challenge myself and be like, okay, so all you're allowed to use is a phone, or in this case for this year was a drone as well. Those are the only things you're allowed to use, but you're allowed to use anything else that you want to make the film, but it has to also be no more than 3 minutes long. So those were the rules of the Moment short film competition, and to be honest, I was sort of guessing those would be the rules, because I was hoping they wouldn't change much from year to year, because I wanted to plan this as much as possible, and I wanted to make it as best as I really could. I wasn't really focused on having good cinematography, I was more focused on getting the story, and I was using those limitations to try and learn all the other aspects of filmmaking, so the directing side, the producing side, the pre-production, including, the scripting and the location and things like that. Once I had decided to enter into this film, I tried to come up with the concept for it, or the idea that I wanted to make for this film, so something that I could keep within the rules, and that would be fairly simple to film, but not necessarily the most mundane thing either. So something I really liked the idea of filming was some sort of situational comedy, because when I was watching all these short films on the Moment Invitational from previous years, there wasn't really too much traditional comedy. There was some, like sort of YouTube style sketches here and there, but there was nothing really like traditional TV comedy. I really like the points of those comedies in the sort of situational scenes where everything is, from the beginning of the episode, is escalated to this one point, and then everything is just sort of exploded into this room, and like there's voices coming from everywhere, and everything is just hilarious because all the different situations from each characters have come together and smashed together, and they're conflicting with each other, and it just makes everything really funny. You can see really good examples of this in Friends and Modern Family, which are two of my favorite comedies that do this really, really well, where there's just lots of events happening at once, and then they all get into a room together, and it all just erupts into just a field of laughter, and it's brilliant from my perspective. But at the same same time coming up with this idea, I was also in the middle of watching, because my parents love watching soap operas. Every time we go over there and visit my parents, they love watching a soap opera called Neighbours. That means I've seen multiple episodes of Neighbours, and I have seen bits of things like Coronation Street and Emmerdale over here. It just made me realise all the time how much I despise soap operas. The only thing I respect about soap operas is that they're actually managing to put something out every weekday that looks half decent and that people are actually interested in to watch, because the fact that people are interested to watch is pretty much the only thing that they care about, it seems, because that's the only thing that, you know, it keeps them in a job, it keeps them going. There doesn't need to be too much creativity. If anything, they just throw in some random events that'll happen into a bowl, take it out, okay, this is going to happen to this character. At least that's what it feels like when you're watching a soap opera. So in my head, I wanted to combine the idea of situational comedy and sort of tease soap operas in a way. Make fun of the formula that soap operas have of, you know, people are supposed to be living normal lives, but then the most dramatic things in their lives happen to them. And to be honest, a lot of the situations I took for my short film actually came from Neighbours directly. So in the end, I came up with Modern Lifetime, and this short film is about mainly about a couple called Kyle and Rose, and they come home after Rose has supposedly disappeared. I should probably warn you that there's going to be spoilers in this next little section. I'm going to be spoiling quite a lot while I explain how I made everything. So Kyle and Rose have come home after Kyle has supposedly just found Rose, or Rose has just appeared out of nowhere, and Rose has supposedly been missing for about 5 days. And as Kyle and Rose come home, they come home to a little bit of an argument. They're fighting with each other. Kyle's just like, where have you been? And Rose just doesn't want to know anything. As they're fighting, they hear a noise, and Kyle's sister, Jasmine, comes in with her girlfriend, Olivia, I believe I called her. So Jasmine and Olivia thought that they had Kyle's apartment to themselves. They like, you know, sharing it together, and it's a good place for them to be alone without being in one of their houses. Then on top of that, we have Kyle's best friend, Chris, come in with a girl he's brought back from a party who he thinks, you know, he just wants to have some fun with, but he's absolutely off his head drunk. And that's the sort of situation I was coming to, and at the end of it, I just wanted to be like, right, as much drama as possible that they do exactly in soap operas. What kind of thing would they do in here? And let's just throw in a marriage proposal. So Kyle's going to drop a ring and propose to Rose on the spot because he doesn't want to lose her. And then on top of that, something else I found in soap operas, let's not just end it there. Let's have another twist, another big twist, and have Rose's doppelganger come in through the door and be like, that's not Rose, I'm Rose, and be like a whole big dramatic. And then at that point, I had the ending scene already in my head. To put into perspective, the Rose that has been in the short film the entire time is actually the evil one who's not Rose, and the one who's coming through the door actually is Rose. And the evil Rose is looking scared, backing away. We cut to a really extreme tight close-up of her face, and it turns from a scared look into an evil smile and then fades black. That's the shot I had in my head for the end of this film, and it's something we sort of got in the end, to be honest. I'll get into the parts of that production in the next BTS video. So in terms of how I did this pre-production, it took about 4 or 5 months to do the initial pre-production. So first of all, I do everything on Google Docs just because, you know, it's free, it's online, I can access it from anywhere, it's quite easy to use from anywhere. So I start off with a document template that I've made for myself for films because I found that this is the way I like doing things. So I've made a template for my initial ideas, and what I put in these initial ideas are the demographics and psychographics of an audience. That's always what I start with. Who is my film going to be directed at? Then I add the plotline summary. So it's sort of like a blurb for the film or the short film, summarizing everything that's going to happen, or, you know, something that makes people want to watch the film. Then I move on to the characters, so I'll start off with the main characters, and because everyone is a main character in this short film, I just made everyone a main character, but I also have subsections for important characters, so characters that aren't main characters but are still really important to the plot, and then also other characters, so characters that are, you know, sort of side characters, but they do add a little bit here and there, and they deserve an actual, you know, being named and a background story and things that help flush out their character still. And then the final section that I add to this template isn't really to do with this film in particular, but I know in the future one of the things I really want to make is sci-fi, because sci-fi is one of my favorite genres, and I decided to add a section that is summary of the universe. And what this subsection of my initial ideas is sort of what the title suggests. What is this universe that you're in? So let's just treat this as, there is definitely a multiverse, and this story actually that you're writing actually exists in some other universe. So in that universe, on that Earth, what is it like? What is the difference? What details are there in this universe that will help people believe that this is the world that they're in? But for something as simple as Modern Lifetime, I really didn't have to do much to it, so it's just as simple as me saying, this universe is pretty much identical to our universe. It's identical in every other way, except for the fact that these characters are alive in it and that they live in this place in it. That is the only difference. So once my initial ideas have been finalized and written down, I then move on to a document that I name key events. So what I do in this document is, it's a very short document. It's normally about 1 or 2 pages and quite big font because nothing really too much goes into this. But what I end up doing is I plot every single key point that I want to happen in this film in chronological order. So for example, for Modern Lifetime, what I put on the start was that Kyle and Rose come in, they're arguing about something, and then Jasmine and Olivia come in, they're arguing about something, and then Chris and Katrina come in, and then everything's starting to kick off. Kyle drops the ring, Kyle proposes, Doppelganger comes in, and that is how I'm plotting the key events of this film. So once that had all been done, I was finally feeling ready to write the script. So this is after about 4 or 5 months of preparing everything and feeling ready to write the script. For this film, I did use a website called Studio Binder, which I do think is a useful website in some respects, but for someone who doesn't make films often enough, I don't think the price warrants how much I'll be using that website, because I don't think I'll be pre-producing films that many months in a row to warrant like a $30 a month spend. So for this film, because you do get one project free, I did use Studio Binder to write this script, but for my future references and future scripts and future films, I am going to be using a free program called Trelby, and I believe this is free because it's open to the community to actually add what they want to it if they, are able to program it in properly and people actually like the suggestion and like what they're adding to the program. And it's a very, very intuitive program. It does the same thing that Studio Binder does, just with a few different shortcuts, and I've been enjoying. I'm actually already on my next script, and I've started using Trelby for that script, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's a really good tool to use for script writing. So the script probably took me another 2-3 months maybe to finally finalize. So what I do is I just lay out everything from my head onto the script, just make sure I have the first draft of the script written down and on paper so I can just look through it and read through it, make sure everything's okay. And then I just go through it again and pretty much just rewrite everything, because everything that I've just splurged from my head onto the page isn't going to be amazing. It's just going to be a little bit, it's okay, I've got the ideas there, I just need to add the finesse there and make sure that the words actually say what I want them to say. And then once I've done that second pass, I go through a third time, and then if I don't think it's done for the third time, I do it for a fourth time, and basically I just keep going over and rewriting parts of the script until I can read through the entire script and be like, okay, I didn't feel like I needed to change anything in this script. And this is obviously after showing it to other people as well. I do show it to other people to see what they think and if they think anything needs changing too. And once I'd done that and everyone was happy and I was happy, then that was it. Or the script was done after months of planning had been done, and we were finally ready to start getting everything ready for the shoot. So the first thing I wanted to try and source for this film was a location. For the location, I really wanted it to be a flat, or just something that the area would be like a sort of like a living room, where the main points for me were that the characters would come through a front door and they would enter into a living area with another door that other people would be coming out of. That was the main point for me, so that there was basically an entrance door and an interior door already there. But obviously finding a flat is a lot harder than it sounds, because obviously I don't actually know many people that live in flats. Most of the people I know live in houses either either with family still, or they just don't live in locations that are easy enough to use. So what I ended up doing was actually settling for a living room area with a couple of doors. Well, actually, it ended up being one door, which that's something I would have changed. I would have tried to probably look a bit harder for a better location, but I knew there wasn't really much time when we were getting to this point, and I just wanted to make sure that December was my shooting point. And remember, I decided to come up with this idea from the previous Moment Invitational Film Festival, which was in January, so we'd already gotten to the point of about September, and I needed to find this location so that we could definitely shoot in December, because I hadn't even started looking for actors or props or anything at this point. Luckily, we had been working on a film in September as well at that same point. I think it was in September, called Uninspired Moments, which we were the directors of photography on, and at this location we are good friends with the director now as well, and she kindly let us use this location, the same location, for our shoot for this short film. And luckily the room that I had in mind to use for this short film wasn't any of the rooms that was shot on the last short film, so it looks like, we're using the exact same place. It'll actually look like somewhere different. In reality, it's the same house. We shot her short film and my short film in the exact same house. So then after that, it was a case of me looking for some actors. Now, I did have a couple of actors already in mind, and they really kindly agreed to do it without paying them or anything, but I did get them all in the end presents, because I felt really bad about not having to pay them, and this just shows how much they love the craft when they do it for free, essentially, because they were just kind enough to read through the script and come over for a night and just play a character, and that's just really nice of them to do. So a couple of them I had in mind already to do it, and they really kindly said yes. And then I had a few people, after sharing on Facebook and Twitter and everything like that, I had a few people approach me saying they're interested in looking at being one of the characters for this film, but unfortunately they ended up couldn't do it for different reasons. Like, some people couldn't get off work for the day that we had planned the shoot for, and some people had childcare issues and just little problems like that. And unfortunately it got to a point where it got so close to the shoot date, and I still had hardly any actors, because I had actors dropping out here left and right, and it just became to a point where I had to ask some of the people that I would plan to shoot with if they would be in the film for me, such as the director for Uninspired Moments, Kristen, was actually playing Olivia, and my girlfriend, who's normally my shooting partner and director of photography, she had to play Katrina. The AD and script supervisor from Uninspired Moments, Hannah, also decided to really kindly play the role of Rose, because she used to do some acting in the past and she kind of was interested in the role in that respect. And the main character for Kyle ended up being a guy called Dan Welsh, who I used to go to primary school with and I've known for quite a long time, and he's a good mate of mine, and I thought it would be a good chance, because he's always wanted to get into acting, to give him a chance at playing a character. So funnily enough, once I'd done all of that, the very last thing I did before we shoot, which was only a couple of days beforehand, which I really should have thought about ahead, was the actual storyboarding, which I didn't do it the most normal way that people would do a storyboard or a shot list of some kind. Well, actually, if anything, it was more like a shot list than a storyboard, because what it ended up being was me just going on Google Docs again, going on Google Images, and then literally just searching up the types of angles that I wanted, sticking it in chronological order, saying this is the type of shot I want. I wanted it to look similar to this shot, putting the camera settings next to it, and then also putting the lighting setups next to it as well. So that's how I knew how everything was going to go on the day, was by putting those lighting setups onto it and all the camera settings, and make sure everything, I knew the types of angles I wanted to get, even if they weren't exactly the same as the Google Images document. Even though I did that, I couldn't really properly account for things like the space I was working with and how big everything was going to be. So that was a bit of an issue, because there's a lot of time constraints. I didn't really have too much time to go over and actually scout that particular location. I was only able to go over once and try and map out where everything can go and what space we had for everything, but it was difficult nevertheless. But finally, once everything had been done with that, we were finally ready to shoot for December.